you want to say anything, you can just start.
Okay, sir. Okay. So I'm keeping
We'll give you.
everyone on mute to avoid any kind of audio issues. When you are talking, you can unmute from your end. Thank you. So very good evening and a warm welcome to one and all present here. Team Planet is very proud to be a part of this association as a digital partner. Planet is India's largest live digital CME and doctors generated medical content platform. So here is a short glimpse of Planet that I would like to share with you all. Thank you so much all for your patience. You can always find us on Google www.planet.com. We have various services which are like Midwiki, Medical Wikipedia for doctors. We have live sessions conducted by eminent speakers across the globe. We have telemed site, and all these are exclusively free for medical practitioners. So now, without further delay, I would like to welcome Dr. Aninan Kutte sir to start with the scientific program. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sabrina. Yeah. Respected Rajagopal sir was taking a lot of pain in organizing this ICL. All delegates, faculty, esteemed faculty, and dear friends from all over India. Greetings from OASIS. I am the Secretary General of OASIS, Dr. Professor Aninan Kutte. This is a monthly program, the instructional course lectures of OASIS. We have started around 9 months back. Every month it comes from each state and in different topics. It is on the first Tuesday of every month at 7 p.m. So it's bringing the knowledge to your doorstep as we started from our experience with Corona period. So we are extending that so that the postgraduates and young orthopedic surgeons can get updated from all parts of orthopedics and other related specialties every month at their own home. So welcome to you all, and let's not delay much. We'll start the program. I'll call upon Rajagopal sir for introducing the faculties and the program. Thank you. Rajagopal sir. Debulna, you can.
Okay. Good evening to you all.
Yeah. I was audible now, sir.
Yeah, you are very clear. You are audible very clearly. Thank you, Dr. Anin.
Go on, sir.
Good evening to all. At the outset, I thank my esteemed faculty, Dr. Arvind Kasturi, who is here. The others will be logging in because 2 of them are out of the country actually, and of course, only 1 more person left who also will be joining soon. It's our pleasure to hold this ICL from the Pondicherry Orthopedic Association. Unfortunately, due to very personal reasons, our president is not able to join now. We had chosen this topic, which I thought is something which is very important for almost all of us, not necessarily only the postgraduates. And it is something which I was quite surprised to find out when I valued the FNB spine answer paper this time. Even there were 2 short questions for 10 marks on put together on citation and impact factor. Now, with this, even at the short notice, I got excellent faculty. And I think the most important person, definitely no doubt, and the only non-orthopedic surgeon in the group, Dr. Arvind Kasturi, I know him from 1996. Is probably the best faculty I could have had, because this particular talk, after I kept the talk, I looked for him. In the sense, I know somebody can do justice to only somebody with experience like that. He is also the medical superintendent of St. John's Medical Hospital now. He basically works as professor in community medicine, but he's also extremely interested in research. And during my period from 90s to 2011, he is almost always the best teacher award in the hospital, always went to him. And other than his knowledge, he is an excellent speaker and multidimensional person. So I'm very happy to have him here. Welcome, Dr. Arvind Kasturi.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
And I can see Rishi Khanna already just logged in. Long life for you, Rishi. I know Rishi for a long time, right from his student days, I will say. And after that, as a consultant, now as an expert in every field, and a person of not only immense spine knowledge, as a generally a person with a lot of interest in publication and research. Thanks, Rishi, for joining us today, in spite of being also you. He has also got another program going. So, and I think the others, Dr. Anil Bhatt is actually at present in a session in UK. So in between, either he'll be able to log in or I have got recorded version. And Dr. Venkatraman is the other faculty, probably the youngest in this group. But last OASIS Con, we had again a research methodology workshop with him. I was so impressed that with him that I kept him as one of the field, which is again of very much use to everybody. With that, I will go over to the scientific program with the permission of Dr. Anand. Should I wait for the president or can I go ahead?
Yeah, please, sir. Please go on, sir.
I think we are well within the time of 7:30. We are just a little bit earlier only. Dr. Arvind, over to you. And before you start, only thing is, Arvind, in case, see the problem with this particular thing is the questions from the forum comes to us pretty later. So what I can do is that if the questions come to me or to Anin, we'll keep it. If you are free, I'll call up later and ask you. If you are not free, even in one of our next meetings, we can still do that.
Okay,
right?
sir. So in this, we have everybody can put the chats then and there itself, sir.
Okay, fine. Oh, then it's very good.
So
and before
it's not an issue.
Before I
you
hand
can
over,
just go through the chat and then see.
Yeah. And before I hand over to Dr. Arvind, on behalf of the association and the president and secretary and the YSS, I have a hearty welcome to all the delegates who are landed. Thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Arvind.
Yeah. All delegates, please put in their queries on the chat box each and every time you find one, so that the faculties can answer that immediately. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Dr. Rajagopalan. Very, very kind words. I do not consider myself worthy of all what you said, but thank you very much for inviting me to this very interesting program. I must confess that it's the first time I have heard of this first Tuesday of every month. I mean, really wonderful to have an academic program like this, having a frequency like that, and interest like this. So from my side, I'd just like to say a word of thank you and all the best to you as you go ahead. The topic that you have chosen today also, I think is interesting and sort of thought-provoking, even though it's all around us. It's kind of like the elephant in the room, so to speak. Research is everywhere, but nowhere sometimes. So it's nice to have a session focused on research. To kick it all off, Dr. Rajagopalan suggested that we ask this question of why should we do research? What is the importance of doing research? So I thought I'd present what I'm calling random thoughts, significance untested. I'll just throw them out as they come and let's see where we go. Yes, I'm Arvind Kasturi. I'm from St. John's Medical College Hospital. I work with community health primarily, but now I'm sitting in this chair of the Chief of Medical Services of the hospital. So why research? Now, let me plunge straight away into a scenario. The area that I work in right now in community health is the care of the elderly or community geriatrics. That's my area of interest. That's where I'm working most of the time now when I actually go and see patients. They are at primary care in the community, senior citizens in the community most of the time. So let's plunge into this. Recently, I saw a 65-year-old lady. She presented with a mild headache, no known chronic comorbidity. And when I examined her, we found that the blood pressure was mildly elevated. Otherwise, the examination findings were fairly remarkable. unremarkable, sorry. And a workup for her headache, her cardiovascular disease profile, all that did not really yield anything of very great significance. So we ended up treating her like this. We said that she should take amlodipine once daily, and to relieve her of her headache, paracetamol perhaps once or twice a day. We also went ahead and suggested some dietary modifications, physical activity. We told her to review in a month and tried our best, being a senior citizen, to reassure her, give her some confidence so that she can walk out with a smile. Now, this is fairly straightforward primary care practice. I'm sure very, very familiar to all of you, those of you who sit in primary care clinics. I do know that this audience is largely orthopedic surgeons, no doubt. But in primary care elderly, this is a fairly routine kind of practice thing. But then I paused and asked myself, what did I just do? Now, I just wrote out a prescription for amlodipine. I mean, it's a very basic antihypertensive, which we use all the time. But if we go deeper into what I just did, why did I write that amlodipine? It is based on a fact that somebody somewhere has taken the trouble to do a study and say, if I give amlodipine, what exactly happens to an elderly person with hypertension? And perhaps that has been replicated in so many settings with so many doses and so many different schedules. And as a result of all that, I feel very free today to sit in my office or in my clinic out there in the periphery and see this patient and prescribe her amlodipine. And not just amlodipine. When I look at paracetamol, which is probably, we used it like water when the COVID pandemic was upon us. Even paracetamol is, after all, the result of somebody doing something to find out what exactly does paracetamol do in the presence of a headache. Of course, this particular article talks about episodic tension type headaches. But the point is that paracetamol is something we just buy over the counter. We don't even prescribe it. But it is the result of some painstaking research which somebody has done somewhere. Similarly, of course, dietary modifications and physical activity, dietary approaches to stop hypertension. The DASH diet is now making waves. People have sat down, people have taken the trouble to look at different dietary compositions, reducing sodium, increasing potassium, so many things, so many ways in which we can try and reduce the blood pressure using a dietary approach. And when we tell our patients routinely, go for a walk for 30 minutes every day, accumulate at least 150 minutes of aerobic exercise a week, we are not doing it because when we were born, it kind of was divinely revealed unto us that this is a good thing. We did it because somebody is taking the trouble to look at whether that makes a difference. And that is the meaning ultimately of the word research. It is a scientific inquiry to answer a question, which is not just a question like, what shirt do I wear today? But it is a scientific question saying that what is exactly the effect of physical activity on hypertension on somebody with high blood pressure. So even a thing like monthly review and reassuring our patient, which I'm sure you do, every patient that you see, you end your interview by saying, don't worry, it will get better. Take care. We are here, don't worry, anytime you want, come back. Now you are reassuring that person. Even that is the subject of somebody doing a study and saying that if you look at this bottom, that there are two things here. One is on how often and how frequently should we measure our blood pressure. And the other one is on reassurance. And if you look at that second thing written there, it says reassurance may help patients decreasing their stress and anxiety. Of course, we know that. Intuitively, we know that. But again, somebody has taken the trouble to do it. So in other words, what we do as part of our daily practice and our daily lives, which we take for granted most of the time when we write a prescription or do a procedure or perform an intervention is, after all, because somebody somewhere has proved that that actually makes a difference. So in the world of medicine, now this is a picture of a band, rock band Police. I mean, this is when they were young. Today they're a bunch of elderly people. But this is a very popular song. It says, every breath you take, every move you make, every step you take every single day, because it ends differently. But in the world of medicine, it is because somebody, somewhere, in some way has researched it. And that is why you are doing what you do. So when you ask the question, why should you do research? I come back to the question, what kind of a person are you? What kind of a person are you? Are you the medical college professor whom all your students love? Are you the academic? Are you the hotshot private practitioner with a busy practice? There's a crowd always at your clinic waiting to see you. Are you the internationally renowned surgeon who's the default option for speaker at every international conference? You know the type I'm talking about. Or are you just this quiet guy who loves to read and occasionally write, perhaps? So what kind of person are you? Now let's take the first. If you are into academics, I think this is the easiest question to answer. Why should you do research? You should do research because the National Medical Commission says this, that if you want to become a professor, you should have all these things. You should have at least 3 research publications, at least 2 when you were associate professor. And they've gone ahead and said that what kind of papers they should be. They should be original, they should be meta-analyses, they should be systematic reviews, whatever, that are published in, I've taken that section off, but published in many indices or indexes. And the author must be among the first 3 or should be a corresponding author. So this is a powerful motivation for somebody to do research if you're an academician. Also, come on. I mean, as an academic, I'm sitting here in a medical college and hospital. How many times we hear this? We met at a research meeting. I'm going for a research paper presentation. And a student comes to you and says, sir, can you guide my research study? Can you be my guide for this research study? And she is faculty at our research methodology workshop. I mean, all these are the opportunities. All these are perhaps the small reasons, the small triggers why you would want to do research when you are in academia or in a medical college. Okay, let's move over scenario. You're this hotshot private practitioner. You've got a busy practice. The clinic is full of patients always. And you find your guys nowadays, this is, I know this is very familiar ground to all of you. My patient produced a Google study. And he's questioning my decision, saying, look at the study. It says that the evidence shows that actually what you're giving me is not as effective as this tablet. So, doctor, what do you think about this? Now, your research background here has to come to the fore. You've got to say that study, my friend. You look at the study design. I mean, if you're engaging in that kind of level, you can say, look at that study design, look at the sample. He's done it on 10 people. And he thinks that that is, well, actually, that is not probably right. This is why I feel that for you, this is better. Why don't you see Dr. X? You hear one patient saying it to another patient. He gives you the latest treatment because he has taken the pains to do all this research and read these research papers. Doctor, I read somewhere that cilnidipine is actually better than amlodipine. Why are you giving me 5 milligrams of amlodipine? You should be able to answer that question. You should be able to produce from your research knowledge the answer to that question. I saw Dr. X. He was reading something in his clinic. I asked him what it is. He said it's a journal. And when I go out, I'm going to tell somebody he's a good doctor. He likes to keep abreast of what's going on. He's interested in medical research. So even if you are this profile of person, research is an important part of our lives as medical professionals. Well, the internationally renowned surgeon who goes from conference to conference. In our paper on the subject, he says from the podium, we studied 367 people with knee osteoarthritis, and our results with this treatment are amazing. Now, I'm sure all of us would like to speak like this. But in order for us to speak like this, we need to do the work that lies behind that. And that is a research study. You say, thank you for inviting me to this conference. The research we have done, we hope will lead to a change in the way that we look at osteoarthritis of the knee. Maybe you say, thank you for the introduction. And you say to that guy who introduced you, we actually met at a research conference, then we kept in touch. We did a study together. We became part of a team. And now I've joined this prestigious institution. The networking opportunities, the opportunities to meet people as part of a research group. So many reasons why you should do research. And finally, you thank God and my research team for being given the opportunity to make a difference. Now, if I were to probably pinpoint the reason why a medical professional has to do research, it is because of this, perhaps. We took an oath, the Hippocratic oath, that we will do what we were trained to do and do it well. And that calls upon us to make some form of a difference and leave this world in a better shape than when we came into it. And one of the ways in which we can do that is to do a good research study and publish our findings. You're the quiet guy who likes to read, occasionally write. Well, guys like that start with correspondence to the editor of a journal. I just like a small correspondence which I wrote a letter. Blood pressure during moderate or maximal exercise. I feel it's hardly two sides of the same coin. This was a small correspondence which somebody wrote. Then he reads his name in print and he says, now I'm going to do a case. And then he sees it again. And then he says, hang on, I'm going to write an original article. I'm going to actually do a study and write an original piece of research in a prestigious journal. This journal is called Journal of Hypertension. It's a fairly well-indexed, well-cited journal. And maybe one day I will actually be the lead author of a review article, a systematic review and based on meta-analysis of this. So if you're a person who likes this kind of thing, to actually put pen to paper and give an opinion, you start humbly perhaps, but you go on and you see how fulfilling or how interesting it becomes and how you actually like to do this kind of thing. So, ladies and gentlemen, why indeed should you do research? Academia requires research efforts. There is no unfortunate two ways about it. And evidence of good quality research. Keeping up with what's the latest requires an ability to ask, do, analyze, interpret, and use research information, right? And the advancement of knowledge, we require research. Otherwise, we get stuck in a well and we are doing the same thing over and over again, which we did 20 years back, but the world is moving on. You know much better than me what the advances are in the latest in technology, in therapy, therapeutics, right? And it's a great opportunity to get grants. Research grants these days are a big thing. And if we research grant writing opportunities, grant call for grants, these things we do see very frequently. Meet people, create a team, present your work, travel, see different institutions. All this is possible when you do good quality research. And you will see your name in print, that joy, and be quoted by your peers. So this is it that I have for you today. I've taken 15 minutes. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to say why I think we should do research. I haven't exactly done as much research probably as I should have, but it's never too late to do a research study, guide somebody, pick up a postgraduate student or a youngster who wants to do research, and guide them into a research study, and there you get started. So once again, from my side, Dr. Rajagopalan invited me to this, the group in OASIS and ClearNet, I think that's how you pronounce it. Thank you very much for having me. All the very best to all of you. I'm sure you will produce quality articles based on quality research. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arvind. That was a wonderful talk. I mean, it just thought-provoking, a lot thought-provoking, much more than what I imagined. Probably we are just somewhere, the value which you said, this is something which every one of us wants, but I was thinking when we have so many colleges coming up, so many postgraduates coming up, so many consultants coming up, our research output will increase. It does not increase proportionately. That is the saddest situation. And I'm sure this, for all those who have listened so far, is something which you will probably realize the impact of as you think over it. I just give you an example. Somewhere in 70s, all the institutes and JIPMER and PG, I think some of the, I'm not sure which colleges, they stopped thesis for the students. And it took only 3 years or 4 years for them to scrap the tool and start it. I mean, which is an essential part of the education. Thank Dr. Arvind. I mean, a good friend of mine, so I took the liberty of calling Arvind with the thing. Arvind, any questions from the, just please say it. Anil, can you tell me if there's any,
I'll just say, sir. I think no questions in the chat box, sir.
Fine. Okay. Thank you, Arvind, so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
I now invite Dr. Rishi Khanna to give his talk. As you said, already I said, I have essentially in my mind a reason for giving the topics like that. I will tell you why, because the research methodology steps are different. Here, industrially, I have given this, as you will realize it as the program goes on. Over to you, Dr. Rishi.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Thanks to the Pondicherry Orthopedic Association and especially Dr. Rajagopalan sir for giving me this opportunity to present this particular topic. So there is a disclaimer to start with. Basically, I am not a statistician, but I am a spine surgeon with a lot of interest in research. And I think the word statistics is a big nightmare for most of the orthopedic surgeons, and that makes them become wary of doing any research. So this is just a small prelude to how to understand about statistics so that we can build on it. So why should we know the basic statistics? So if we have to start a thesis, the important thing is we have to put forth the correct research question to start a research work. Second thing is to choose the correct statistical test both in your research as well as whenever you are reading an article. We should be sure that they have done the correct statistical methods to arrive at the conclusion. Otherwise, whatever the results they have achieved may not have a direct translation into a proper conclusion. Third thing, whenever you are in a meeting or you are discussing with a statistician, it should not sound Greek or Latin when they talk about p-values and all those stuff. So in this particular presentation, we will go through what is a population and samples, what do we understand by variables, what is the data, and how to choose a particular statistical test based on your research, and what do we mean by the term p-value. So basically the word statistics organize all the information, and finally we are going to analyze the information. So this information we call as data. So this helps us to draw inferences about a population. Only we know that whenever we are going to give an inference about a population, even though we have analyzed only part of the population, so the part of the population is called as a sample. So I will explain it in much more detail, what do we mean by a population and what do we mean by sample in the subsequent slides. So population in general, it means it's not the regular population. Population is all members of a defined group that we are going to study or collect information. For example, if you are going to do a study or we are going to do a research paper or review a research paper which explains about the role of alendronates in elderly population in hip fractures, that particular author would have not evaluated all the elderly populations available in their community who have a hip fracture. What they have done is they have selected a sample, for example a set of patients who present to their hospital, and whatever the information they are going to retrieve from this particular sample, so they are going to extrapolate it to the population across the country. So that is the efficacy of analyzing a suitably selected sample, so it is good for the entire population. So it's not possible to study all elderly patients. So what we are going to do is we have to choose a sample which is carefully selected and which is going to represent this population. So we will use this information from the sample to make inference about the population in general. So coming to the next terminology, variable. A variable is an object or a characteristic or a measure that we observe in a study. It's called as a variable because it varies for each person as well as each study, so hence it is called as a variable. Multiple variables that we are going to collect in a particular study is called as the data. So this is basically the variables contribute to the raw material of our statistics. So we can classify the variables into two broad categories. One is the numerical variable and the next one is the categorical variable. So for example, numerical variable is one which is a quantitative data. So we can have numbers for each of them. For example, if you are going to study the height of a particular study population, we have a set of numbers. So this will be classified as a quantitative or a numeric, which can be only categorized into groups. For example, groups of pine trees versus group of neem trees. A group of vehicles which can fly, whereas a group of vehicles which can float in a sea, like that. So these are the two broad classification of variables, quantitative and qualitative. The quantitative ones, they are all numbers, as we saw earlier. They are again divided into two types. One is a discrete variable, where each one is a single number and there are no fractions to it, whereas the second type of variable, quantitative variable, is a continuous variable where the number can take any value within a given range. Again, the qualitative variables also can be divided into two broad groups. One is the ordinal variable and nominal variable. Ordinal variable is one where the data can be grouped into orders, right, starting from small to the high, like income or the age group. Whereas the nominal variables is one where there are only two categories, for example male or female, or it could be an unordered one, for example Caucasians, Asian Americans, Afro Americans, where there is no order in these groups, so it's male or equivalent to females, like that. So we saw there are two types of variables, quantitative one which is basically numbers, and qualitative ones which are basically categories. Quantitative is further classified into discrete and the continuous one, whereas the qualitative is classified as the ordinal and nominal one. So understanding this is very important so that we can choose the correct statistical test for evaluating our study variable, whatever we are going to collect. The second important concept is we have to understand whatever data we are going to collect usually will have a normal distribution. So this bell curve is called as a normal distribution, wherein most of the values will be having a center common point and the extremes will be tapering down. So this is called as a normal distribution. There are two other extremes, what we call as the skewness. So it could be negatively skewed to one side or positively skewed towards the other side. So for example, if you measure the weight of all the doctors present in this webinar, it will have a normal distribution. So few people will be in the lowest category and few people will be in the obese category, and most of us will be falling in the center one. So why should we know whether the data which we have collected is a normal distribution? Because the statistical tests again are completely different between normal and skewed distributions. So in general, how will we know whether our data, whatever we have collected, is a normal distribution? Is when the mean of the data is completely different from the median of the data, they are poles apart, then it means that the distribution is skewed. Again, if the standard deviation of the mean is again much bigger than the mean, then again it means it's a skewed distribution. So we should use other set of tests called as a non-parametric test. So statistical tests in general can be classified as parametric tests and non-parametric tests. So when you know your variable has a normal distribution, we have to use the parametric test. And when you are suspecting that it could be a skewed distribution, we use a non-parametric test. So coming to our original classification as quantitative data, so most of the variables will be a normal distribution. So if you are studying two groups, for example, a set of patients who had a conservative treatment for hip fractures, whereas another group who had a operative treatment. So this, if it is a normal distribution, so use the t-test. Whereas if multiple groups are being analyzed, then we use the ANOVA test. So I am giving the broad classification. If the same quantitative data is skewed, then what we do is a Mann-Whitney U test, and again there are some more than two groups, though we do a Kruskal-Wallis adjustment, so that I won't go into the detail. Again, there is something called paired t-test. Paired t-test is done when we are analyzing a quantitative data in the same set of population before and after treatment. For example, we are evaluating the effect of an iron supplement in patients with anemia. So we give evaluate the hemoglobin level, give the iron supplement, and again test the hemoglobin after some time in the same group. Then it is called as a paired t-test. So basically we have to remember quantitative data, normal distribution, t-test and paired t-test. Whereas if it is skewed, then we use a Mann-Whitney U test. Coming to categorical data, there are only two broad tests. One is the chi-square test and another one is the Fisher's exact t-test. So if you are analyzing a large group of study sample, then we use the chi-square test, and small intergroups, then we use the Fisher's exact test. So this is what we should remember. So far we have learned about population, what do we mean by a sample, what do we mean by a data, what are quantitative, qualitative variables, how to know whether our distribution of data is a normal one or a skewed one, and the broad classification of statistical tests. So whenever you read a paper, you check the methodology, they have given the statistical tests. So there you check whether they have used the correct statistical test for the particular variable that they have studied. So we should also know about measures of central tendency and dispersion. So basically this is the mean, median and mode. So the center point is the mean. So that's in any normal distribution, the center point will be the mean. And the standard deviation is how much it is getting dispersed, how much of the variables are getting dispersed away from the central mean. So mean is very important because obviously if you compare these three groups, so all these things are having a mean of 7. But if we look at their standard deviation, the first one has a standard deviation of 0. So it's a very similar group, whereas the next one is a group which has a reasonable standard deviation, 0.63. So this is the normal distribution which we will see in most studies. The third one, you can see the standard deviation is quite wide, basically because even though the mean is 7, there is a wide dispersion of the data which we have collected. So more than the mean, the standard deviation also should be evaluated to study whether we have a normal distribution of data. So what do we mean by the standard deviation? So within standard deviation, if the whatever patients we have collected, the variables we have collected, if it is having a normal distribution, 68% of the total population will fall within the mean and one standard deviation. 95% of the total population will fall within 2 standard deviations. That's why most studies will quote mean plus 2 standard deviations. Right. So basically what we mean is if we take an example of a reaction time of a particular drug which has a mean of 10 minutes and standard deviation of 2 minutes, 68% of subjects, 95% of subjects will have a reaction time between 6 and 14 minutes. That's a basic understanding. So again, we should analyze that if we have a large number of values, that's why your statistician always will say collect more number of patients. So if you have a more number of patients, the standard deviation will be very limited. Whereas if you have less number of patients, the standard deviation will be wide. So if you have wide standard deviation, your statistical test will not have enough strength. So coming to the final, that nightmarish thing, p-values. Everybody talks about a p-value, but we should have a good understanding about when somebody says a p-value of 0.05 is considered significant. In some studies, you would have found that a p-value of 0.01 is considered significant. So p is basically stands for a probability value. So I will explain with an example. So we are considering a population, for example, in Pondicherry, about 1,000 people. So we know their mean IQ and standard deviation. So the IQ of the entire population is about 100 and the standard deviation is 15. So we want to give a special drink for a group of people, for all the people, and see over 2 months to know whether this resulted in an improvement in the IQ of the people. So we gave the special drink, and again after 2 months, instead of checking all the people, we are selecting a set of 25 people and then checking their mean and standard deviation of IQs, right? So this is the total population of Pondicherry's IQ, and this is what we have found. So we have taken 25 people and find that their standard deviation, their mean IQ is 106 with a small standard deviation, right? So now we have to use a statistical test. So like I told, IQ is a number, so numerical variable, so quantitative test. So we have to use a t-test for the student's t-test, and we check the p-value. So the p-value comes as 0.006. So what is this 0.006 means? It's basically 1 divided by 160. So what it means that even though we have not checked the entire population, whatever sample we have chosen, it is falling outside the total population. So 101 in 160 only chance is there for the sample to come from the same population, which means that they are remaining in their same IQ, whereas 159 times it is likely to be out of the population. So which is a very high probability. 159 times out of the population means this drink has had a significant effect. Even then there is a very little chance, 1 in 160 chance that the drink didn't work, but we are accepting a probability which is very strong, 0.006. So by convention we accept anything as 1 in 20 chance as significantly different. That's why a p-value of 0.05 is considered a significant value. So we can also have a second possibility where the mean is 103 and the standard deviation is within that group. So we can see this mean is falling within the population's mean. So which means that they have a p-value of 0.02, which means that there is only 1 in 5 chance that our sample came from the same population 4 out of 5 times. So 4 out of 5 times is much higher chance than the 160 times which we saw earlier. That's why we say a p-value of 0.2 as an insignificant one, whereas a p-value of 0.05 as a significant one. So that is the conclusion of the entire presentation. So basically a concept of biostatistics, basic information about variables, sampling, statistical tests, and what do we mean by a p-value is very important for us to start a decent thesis. It is essential to improve our knowledge and strengthen our resume so that we can have a better evidence-based practice. And these are all easy to learn and practice. If we approach in the same way the next 5 articles which we are going to read, then it will be able to grasp what type of statistical tests are used for particular study, and thus it will instill confidence in the researcher and be able to perform a better study. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your opportunity and patient hearing.
Thank you, Rishi. That was a wonderful, explanation of a very, very difficult topic, in the sense that whenever we attend a research methodology program or whenever we take part in it, one of the difficult things to explain to any group is the statistics. Dr. Rishi has made it very, very simple. It's not as simple as he said. It is not as simple, but he has still, within the short time, he has given us a lot of knowledge. It is very simple once you have learned it. That's why
Yes.
he has made it simple, and he could make us understand. But to learn, initially, we need little more time. So I think, but without that, That's the most important thing. I had, after the first talk on the value, I kept this because without knowing what is the point of making the results if we are not able to come to a conclusion? For that, we need a good knowledge of statistics, and one shouldn't be running to statistician all the time for the study. Initially, yes, as a postgraduate doing your thesis, but after that, we should be able to at least have a initial grasp and get it double checked by the thing. Thank you, Dr. Rishi. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
And
sir.
Anil, any questions or anything has come for the first talk? Because as long as Rishi is there, we can. Any questions have come, Anish?
Nothing as such, sir.
Okay.
No chat.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Yeah, Vijay Raman.
Yes, yes, Vijay, please. Your sound is
Vijay,
Vijay, your sound is
keep the mic
distorted.
little away from your little distance.
No, you can just take off that mic, I think. It's very distorted voice.
Now, I think if you take off, I think in this you won't hear. Yeah, maybe your thing. Try to reduce the volume on your. Right. Are you through a laptop, Vijay? So maybe if you don't need us, we can directly go through the laptop. It might be because we are able to see you clearly, but the voice is a little bit
Distorted.
yeah. But we want to still hear you. Can't run away.
You can directly talk to the laptop.
Yes.
So take off that earpiece, this one. Yeah.
Vijay, I am also using a mic, like you say, earpiece, but I kept it little far away, this much distance. So maybe if you keep it little more farther away, your mic is obviously very sensitive microphone.
Yeah. Please go ahead, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, Vijay, try again, Vijay, please. There's a hum in the background. Yeah. Vijay?
So, sir, can type in the chat box.
Yeah, that's what. Rajagopal, sir, we'll
Yeah.
go ahead.
Vijay?
So next talk.
Okay. So, Rishi, thanks a lot. I think he has got another program.
Thank
And in spite of the schedule, thanks for coming and joining.
Thank you, sir.
The next talk is by Dr. Anil Bhatt. He is also actually in London attending a hand or upper limb meeting. So I have recorded.
I've just joined.
Oh, welcome, Anil.
Thank you.
I
Welcome,
don't think,
Anil.
Thank you,
I
sir.
will introduce it to anybody in this crowd, but I have to say one thing. He is the person, who joined with me, and now he has got far above me, and that is the happiest thing for me in my life. And he is excellent faculty, as all pages know. Over to you, Anil.
Never, sir, never.
I want you to. Anil will be talking on. Okay, you anyway start.
Sir, will you be playing the recorded talk, or you want me to present?
I leave it to you, Anil. I have ready with it. If you want me to do that, I will do it.
Yes, sir, because I think my Wi-Fi connection might not be very good here.
Just I'm
Yes,
going
sir.
to share the screen. You can watch it. Just a second. I'm seeing where is his talk in this. I had kept it, saved it in the desktop. Yeah, it's here. Is the voice coming through?
Hello everyone. This research workshop is an excellent initiative by the Journal of Orthopedics for people interested in carry out the research. And when you start your journey of writing a research,
Volume has to be increased, sir. Volume has to be increased.
Volume, this is the maximum.
depending on the type of manuscript you will be writing, ranging from original article to a case report.
It improves as it goes on.
And the structure basically has these sections in it. In most of the journals would be the title, the abstract, introduction, methods, results, tables and figures, discussion. So that's how it goes, and finally conclusion, acknowledgements and references. So I'll just go one by one of these and start off with the title itself. The acronym of PRIP would be helpful to formulate your title in terms of topic, the result, intervention, prevention, and how concise and informative the title is very, very important. You need to add the phenomenon of greatest interest for the reader. So whether it's the result, which is something new.
You want me to present, sir?
Yeah, Anil, the volume, this is the maximum, Anil.
I'll present, sir. I've just got the
Anil,
Is it better now? No.
No, I think, Anil, if you can better present.
Shall I
Yeah, I
stop?
can do it. I can do it. Can they make me the co-host?
Yeah, 1 minute.
Yeah, you can just, you don't need to be. You can just share, unshare. Sir, you
Yeah,
can
I'm doing
unshare
that.
and
I'm
Anil
doing,
can
I'm
share
doing,
it.
I'm doing that. Yeah.
Anil, please share.
Anil, this is the maximum volume. I tried. But it is very clear for me.
Is the screen visible?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
screen
very
visible.
much.
Yeah, put it in slideshows. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Start.
Yeah, better now.
Yeah. Thank you, Rajgopal sir, for this, and the OASIS ICL team. Basically, how to start writing a manuscript. We do a lot of our clinical studies, but most of them don't actually go on to become a published paper. So this is a basic guideline how to write a manuscript. And manuscripts can be different ways. A original article, a case report, a brief report, or a review article or editorial. So each of us in our different stages of life might actually be writing any of these things. So most of us would probably start off with writing a case report. And always it's a dream to write an original article completely and get published. Review articles are basically invited articles, or if you become an editor of a journal, you'll do an editorial. So each has its own different pattern of writing. And the structure is basically of a manuscript would be that you write a title, and then there is an abstract, there's an introduction to be written, the methods, results, tables, figures. So whatever, at least this for the postgraduates, whatever you've done in your thesis or dissertation would be the similar type, except that each journal has its own format to be written, and there will be restriction in the number of words, restriction in number of the tables or figures. So these are the things you have to. And finally, conclusions. Always acknowledge people who have helped, and then also the references will be based on the standard journal requirements. Titles are basically to reflect exactly what you have done. So what is the basic topic you're addressing here? Is it very concise and informative? Add the phenomenon of greatest interest in the title itself so that it attracts readers, because once you publish, you're looking at citations. So more people look at it and they read the abstract and they look at the title, they need to download it and read your full article. That should be the purpose. And it actually reflects the strategy. As an example of a article, anatomical reduction and precise internal fixation of articular fractures of the distal radius with virtual X-ray and 3D printing. This was a study done. And the type of article here, if you see, I mean, the topic itself is basically distal radius fixation. When I talk about the TRIP, what I told about, and the results are anatomical reduction and precise internal fixation. The intervention is virtual X-ray and 3D printing. And the population study, of course, we don't really have to mention is it human study or, human study, definitely we don't need to mention, but we need to mention if it's an animal study specifically in the title. So these are the basic guidelines when you talk about the title itself. Avoid, fancy titles like this is a novel study of or investigation of, or observations on, these kind of things. Also avoid title as a question, because it's found that if you put a title as a question, there will be a lot of the citations will be actually reduced. People don't really search for as a question when they put in the keywords. So don't make it a question, but always make a statement and make sure those principles are followed. Always put the important word first. Same example of this particular journal now, article. If you take this here, anatomical reduction, precise internal fixation is the first word actually, but the actual work what the authors did was something else. So here the emphasis is anatomical reduction, precise internal fixation, but a better title would have been the virtual X-ray and 3D printing for anatomical reduction and internal fixation, because that was their actual work. So virtual X-ray and 3D printing should have been probably emphasized a little more. A lot of journals ask for running titles, and always, my postgraduates or my juniors always ask, sir, what is running title? How should we write it? So it's basically should be recognizable as a short version of the main title. The main title of the previous example, if I take now, the title should be just few words: virtual X-ray, 3D printing in internal fixation of distal radius. I've eliminated now anatomical reduction, precise internal fixation, and all those things. So a short version, it will be printed on the top of your article, all the pages. So that is what is a running title a lot of journals ask for. The second thing, all journals ask for keywords. And it's not that randomly you select some words and put in there. Usually it's 2 to 5 words. Always select these keywords using the mesh terminology, the medical subheadings, or it's available in the PubMed. You need to go to PubMed and see what the keywords you have chosen and try to see whether it matches there, and it comes up in the search. And this is what people will do later. They put the keywords and try to search. And if your keywords don't match there, it's a lot of times your article doesn't come up when they actually search. Even Google Scholar also gives this. So check your keywords and see whether they're coming up in the usual research, in the usual search rather. Abstract is basically what was studied, the introduction of the topic itself, why is it was studied, whether it's the hypothesis, how was it studied, that is the method, and what was found, the results itself. So, and what it means, the conclusions. So the most important, everybody reads abstract. They read the title, they read the abstract quickly, and they see whether what did you find. So this is, you're selling your article or you're selling your publication. When I say selling, it basically means you're making it more popular by writing a very nice abstract, and you should have very specific of these things, and the conclusions should be very, very precise. Now, this kind of abstract is a structured abstract where there is purpose, methods, results, conclusions. So some journals ask for these, and they would also mention how many words, generally 250 words or 350 words here. A lot of times they might not mention. This is an unstructured abstract, which is summary of it. So generally, you just write everything together. You're just not dividing into separate headings, but it's basically a summary of this. And most of the time in a case report, they might ask just a summary because you don't have these methods and results and everything in these things. Introduction, just maybe one to 1.5 pages maximum, usually has 4 paragraphs, 3 or 4 paragraphs. The background, so you talk broadly on the particular topic especially, and quote couple of landmark articles in this, adequately describe the topic. Then the second part is, why is there a need for study? Means you have identified from that broad background the knowledge gap there. So you need to tell why you're conducting that particular study. Others have carried out similar studies. If so, what is the lacunae there? So quote at least 1 or 2 major articles. And when you identify the gap, your hypothesis comes in. So the question or hypothesis. So it just usually is 3 or 4 paragraphs. If you know what you have to write, it becomes very easy. Again, a lot of my faculty come and ask, it always stops at introduction. People don't know how to start the introduction. So it's just that 3 or 4 things, the background, what other people have done, what is the need for the study, and have you identified that knowledge gap? And so what are you doing? This is all the 3 or 4 questions you have to answer in the introduction. And your recent literature should be at least, very thoroughly searched, at least the last 5-10 years. And also quote, as I said, any major articles or landmark studies. And does the content of the literature review relates directly to the research problem is what. So the introduction basically sets the scene. It's like a story. You start telling by the reader what has happened or what's happening. And it ends by giving the reader a glimpse of what will follow in the remainder of your article or what is your study itself. So this is how you should start. Do not include details about methods and results or anything in the introduction part. So here, this example here, so they basically, the introduction, if you see, just it was 3 paragraphs, I think, or 2 paragraphs. And it ends by telling the purpose of this study was to present the author's surgical technique and to evaluate the surgical outcome and efficacy of the procedure. So you have to tell the readers why you are doing the study or why did you do this study, and end the introduction with that always. Materials is basically where, with whom, and what, as in the study setting, study sample, and study design, and what was the inclusion and exclusion criteria. So sample size, you have to mention very clearly, especially if it's an RCTs or prospective studies, how did you calculate the sample size has to be mentioned. These are the ones which the editors are looking for specifically. Inclusion, exclusion criteria have to be really specified. Now, if you tell inclusion, exclusion criteria, when you include something, exclusion should be from the inclusion criteria. If you tell that I have included this age group from this to this, you need to exclude those patients from that particular age group. You can't tell we excluded, if I tell I've included 18 to 60, you should not tell I've excluded pediatric patients or old age patients. That is not correct. What you need to tell is in that 18 to 60, what did you exclude? So that's how you need to talk of an exclusion criteria. Very often we see that we just say pediatric patients were excluded, elderly patients were excluded. That is not the correct way. So exclusion criteria should come out of your inclusion criteria. That's the message there. Describe the study design and is it appropriate? Why did you choose it? Whether it's prospective or retrospective. If you're looking at something very rare and something very difficult to do, then you can go for a retrospective and it actually helps. It need not be always prospective, because prospective is for, it requires a lot of resources and so many things. How was the research conducted and data collected? Your materials and methods are the soul of your study. The methodology is the soul of your entire article. And a good editor will just look at your materials and methodology. If somebody else can reproduce your study, that means it's a very good conducted study. Where the subject's rights protected, the ethical clearance, everything has to be very, very clearly mentioned here. And that's very important nowadays. Some of the journals have started asking even the ethical clearance certificate also. So be careful with these things. And if it was an experimental study, you need to talk about how you validated the experiments and how it was performed, how the samples were collected, processed, and stored. In a dissertation, like you would write all this, like anthropometry, height, weight, how it was calculated in the methodology. But when you write an article or a manuscript, you just write this. Anthropometric measurements were noted as per WHO standards. So you don't have to really write complete details of methodology, but it should be very specifically mentioned how the study was conducted. If you come to results and analysis, you need to talk about how the data was analyzed and what about the results. And the most important thing obviously would be the statistical tests, whether they're appropriate. So that has to be very clearly mentioned in a separate heading. And when you looked at the sample size and the power of the study, which is usually kept about 80 or 85, right? So you need to tell that very clearly whether you did that, and that's how you calculated sample size. So these are very, very important when you talk about results. And finally, you're talking about your findings of the study, and it should start basically, do they answer the question or hypothesis, okay, and how you have interpreted your results there. Always look at how many figures and tables. Don't put tables even for, or figures for, age, sex, and all those things. It's like in thesis, I know a lot of people do put in a lot of pie charts and bar charts and things. That's not absolutely necessary. A lot of journals don't allow it also. But one thing you should look at is, do that numbers add up in your tables and graphs and other things? So if people find a problem there at that point where your numbers are not adding, they know that probably the data is not correct. And again, a lot of journals have started asking for raw data nowadays. And is there a result presented for every objective intervention or experiment? That is the most important thing we look at, in the sense that you mentioned your aims and objectives, and your results basically should match that. Your conclusions should match that. Nothing else. No extra things should be written. Coming to discussion, basically, again, not a lot of philosophy there. You should start by answering what you told in terms of the hypothesis or objectives, and describe how the results are supported by other studies or how your results support the other studies. So both way you need to mix and match and try to compare their results. If at all you have any new findings, you have to substantiate in a scientific manner how this is relevant or not. Well, as I said, literature support is very important. Always start with the standard textbook, original articles, and include the latest literature as well as the landmark old articles also when you start writing your discussion. Findings that differ from previous studies, you have to make sure you substantiate clinically. Always include a section for limitation. Always, whatever you couldn't do, or for whatever reason, please put it in the limitation so that the reviewers don't tell this was not done, that was not. Straight away, you accept that these were the limitations of our study, and also mention whether limitations affected your results or not and how it affected. So that is very, very important for us as a reader or editor, where you have to tell us that if the limitations have affected your results, if so, how much, or if not, then you can always tell we didn't do this, but really it didn't affect our results. That's what you need to talk about that. So this is like an example, the limitations, how it ends with this, and finally the conclusions itself. Okay. So most of us will end up telling the number of patients were relatively small, design was retrospective. Okay, but you can tell that why it was small, why you chose the retrospective one. So retrospective doesn't mean bad, but you should always tell why. Look, in COVID-related publications, people told that they couldn't follow up patients, and all it was accepted in many articles because of that reason. Avoid repeating the details just presented in the results when you start discussion. No number should be there into the discussion. And repeating the introduction, all background material should be avoided. Start straight away, talk with aims and objectives. Conclusions is where, again, people get flustered in the sense that they don't know what to write. They start writing a lot of philosophy there. So you should basically answer your aims and objectives directly to the original question or the hypothesis itself, right? That's all you need to do. Don't give any suggestions. Don't make big statements there. Just answer whether your aims and objectives you came through it. Okay, and it should not extend beyond the scope of the study. Always end with declaration of any conflicting interests, ethical approval, any funding, any informed consent, any supplementary material, and finally references based on what the journal wants. And you have so many softwares nowadays, EndNote, Mendelian, so many things. You have Grammarly for grammar correction. So there are so many softwares. Most important thing is a plagiarism check. You have to do that yourself before you send it to the articles. Otherwise, they send it back. As an associate editor or editor, I can tell you that all the softwares there, the moment you submit it, there will be a match. It's called the copy match or the plagiarism match. Everything comes to the reviewer. How many, and even duplicate submissions come to the reviewers. So all this data statistics come to us, and is it matching to any other article? All those things come. So really, it's the onus of the person who's writing these articles that you have to go through all this. You check your plagiarism content, you see your grammar, so that nobody points it out for those kind of deficiencies. When we read it, it starts from title, introduction and all, but when you write the article or a manuscript, you have to start with methodology. Okay, put in the tables and figures, results, discussion, then finally you come to your introduction and abstract and title. You can change the title in between later. So start with methodology when you start writing your article or manuscript, right? Write the results, discussion, then you come. Actually, I do the introduction last always, because that is when you know the entire idea of the entire study itself. Abstract should be done exactly in the last, because you're kind of synthesizing the whole article into few words, and that is what a lot of readers read actually, right? So this is the order you have to write. Always check for guidelines of various reporting guidelines. One has randomized study, has consult guidelines. Observation studies have STROBE, systematic reviews as PRISMA, right? So case reports also has care guidelines. So remember all these things. These are all available online. So check for these. Even before you start your study, actually, I advise that you go through these guidelines and actually do it. But even otherwise, when you're writing, also check whether you kind of, all the tick boxes are done when you see these guidelines, and how you can improve your study itself. So research is definitely a way of life, and I thank Dr. Rajgopal sir for actually, encouraging me to do this right from the beginning. And he's a man who always is research oriented, and I'm inspired by him always. And so we need to develop that mindset very early in life. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anil. That was a wonderful talk. And I can assure you, when we, for example, not only for submission, even when we get a postgraduate thesis for evaluation or papers you have submitted for either free presentation or a poster, so many mistakes, which is that almost 90% of the mistakes, what he asked you to avoid is committed. Particularly, most common is the inclusion exclusion criteria, that it's always put all males or female excluded. I mean, this is the very similar one. And this is one particular presentation where I feel you should make a copy with you and read it 10 times a day. It's a basic mistakes which are very obvious when you know about it. If you don't know about it, you will not even know it's a mistake. That is number one. Number two, actually speaking, he has covered in that everything of research methodology. Even though he said about it's mainly for you to submit a paper, but even when you are any kind of research study, like the title or the research question, everything is very well covered. The thing is like that, it's quite surprising. I even see thesis where the basic mistakes are made. Thesis, there is one more person signing it in spite of that. So I think even I learned a few things in this talk. There are things which we will know sometimes only when we know about it that what we is doing wrong. Thank you, Anil. Thank you so much. And if you are free, stay. But you have been at a tiring day. You are welcome to.
No, sir. I'll stay. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Anil.
Thank you, Anil. The next speaker is Dr. Venkatram. He is a assistant professor in Mahatma Gandhi Medical College. His specialty interest is foot and ankle. And as I told earlier, I think Venkatram was not there. In our last OASIS research methodology, I had put him with all the giants from our area, very senior people. At the end of the session, which was very well attended, Dr. Raghavat came and told me that was a wonderful session, wonderful talk, and everybody appreciated his talk. I think he is I said, youngest of the lot and very handsome. He has a long way to go up in life. He really come to the top. Over to you. And yes, his talk is going to be on literature search and writing the references. That is something which you have to do. If you want to do any kind of research, you should know some knowledge on the topic. So please listen to it. Over to you, Dr. Venkat.
Thank you so much, sir, for such kind words. So, a very good evening, one and all. So today I'm going to talk about a very relevant and a very ignored topic, that how to do a literature search and how to manage references that you obtain from your respective search. So before that, I would like to quote this wonderful written words by Mr. Dr. Altman. He published this in British Medical Journal 1994. He says that whenever a doctor makes an error in his clinical application, when we make a wrong treatment, a wrong diagnosis, a wrong investigation is advised, and finally, if there is some sort of a wrong management of a patient, we definitely call the doctor as probably unprofessional, unqualified, maybe even unethical, but whatever it may be, it is unacceptable. As a doctor, we are not supposed to make such errors. But what about researchers? What about researchers who use wrong techniques, either willfully or they don't know the right techniques, misinterpret results, report their results selectively, hiding important information that they obtained, cite the literature selectively so that it makes whatever they are talking about important or less important, make wrong references, and draw unjustified conclusions. What is it? It should be something appalling, but it happens all the time. So I believe we should, as the next generation of doctors, especially postgraduates, should make sure that we don't make these mistakes anymore. We correct ourselves, and the first step in correcting ourselves is to learn the right way. So the objectives of this particular talk is going to be how to perform a literature search and how to use reference managers from the particular literature search results. So basically, literature search will cover this. What is basically literature search? What should be the purpose of a literature search? How to create keywords from mesh terms? What are the search tools that you will use, and what exactly are Boolean operators? And finally, what are the sources of literature that is available for us? A literature search is actually a well thought out and organized search for all of the literature published on a topic. Very simple 2 sentences, but it explains everything that we are aiming to understand literature search. A well-structured literature search is an effective and an efficient way to locate sound evidence on the subject you are researching. So for example, if you want to learn about proximal tibia fractures, you need to know what should be the way to search for proximal tibia fractures. What exactly are you going to look in proximal tibia fractures? Is it going to be the anatomy? Is it going to be the classification, treatment, management? So you need to know how to go about in identifying a particular topic and how to identify the important key points that you want to learn about that particular topic before you embark on a literature search. This sort of evidence search might be done in books, journals, government documents, as well as internet. And as we know, the current generation is more focused on the last one, the internet. Books and journals are no longer open. So purpose of a literature search, it broadens your knowledge on a particular topic. When you perform a search, you get about hundreds and thousands of results. And when you really look into those results, you start learning new information. Sometimes you may even learn information that you never even imagined or never even given a thought about. So it not only helps you to learn about a particular topic, it broadens the knowledge on the entire topic. It also shows your ability and skill to perform a relevant literature search. Say, for example, your guide tells you to go and find out something about hip fractures. So you go and then make a random search about hip fractures, and then you bring out some Google results. So that is not a right way to do a literature search as a researcher. So if you know a particular way, or if you know the correct way to perform a literature search, and if you show the correct results, your guide or whoever your senior is asking for, you will be really appreciated. You will earn some respect. It also allows for critical appraisal and review of your research. Remember, before performing a particular research, you always should find out what exactly is available on the topic already that is existing in scientific literature. So if you have done a thorough literature search, you will be able to answer questions at your Institute Research Council meeting, at your ethics committee meeting, and institutional research or review board, wherever you have to go and present your particular protocol to get it approved, to get your clearance certificate. You will encounter a lot of questions about the feasibility of your research, about the reason for your research, about the ethical aspect of your research. If you have done a proper literature search on that particular subject, you will be able to ace that particular meeting. You will be able to completely tell whatever information that they require because you are having enough knowledge on that particular topic. So let me tell you the strategy for literature search. So as of now, I've given you an introduction about what is literature search and importance of literature search. How to go about it. This is how you go about it. You first create a well-focused question. So the topic that you want to do a study upon should always be a question. It should either be a question or it should be a statement. So either create a well-focused question or a clear-cut statement. Make a list of important keywords from that particular statement or question. And those keywords should align with mesh terms. So as the previous talk, Dr. Anil Bhatt had wonderfully told about the importance of mesh terms, I will also explain it a little bit more in detail. So let's take an example. Incidence of secondary fractures in patients with history of osteoporotic hip fractures in South India, a multi-centric observational study. This is something that we wanted to do in our college. So this is the statement, research statement. So I am not having a question here. I've made a research statement here. Probably it's a question. You can say that what is the incidence of secondary fractures? So I have to identify the problem. The problem here is secondary fractures, meaning it could be a refracture or it could be some other fracture, osteoporotic or non-osteoporotic fracture. What is the target population in those individuals who had a history of osteoporotic hip fractures? What is the outcome? I want to know the incidence. So that is the outcome. And what is the study design? It's going to be a multi-centric observational study. So I'm going to go and involve multiple institutes in and around the area, probably in around Pondicherry, Cuddalore, Chidambaram. And then I'm going to tell them this is the protocol. Just find out what is the secondary fractures. So this is going to be a purely observational study. There is not going to be any intervention or there is no experimentation involved. So now you know the problem, the target population, outcome, and study design. So from this, you start making keywords. So keywords being secondary fractures, osteoporotic patients, hip fractures, incidence, observational study. So these are the keywords. And finally, these keywords have to metamorphose into mesh terms. So why to create mesh terms? What is the importance of mesh terms? So you will avoid incorrect terminology in your search. So as sir told, when sir was telling, he told that when you are going to make a paper, your title or your abstract should include mesh terms because only those will come in the search results. Conversely, just because all prominent or all well-informed researchers will use only mesh terms, so you should know the correct mesh terms to get their results, their studies. If you want to have them in your search results, you should use mesh terms. What is verbiage? Verbiage is nothing but unnecessary usage of words. Too much words, too much of clutter in your search thing is going to confuse the algorithm, and it is going to give you multiple unwanted results. To reduce that verbiage and ensure maximum success in your literature search. This is your link for the mesh medical subject headings. This is how it opens. It's basically the same as your PubMed, but maintained by the PubMed, your National Library of Medicine. So here is your mesh medical subject headings page, a home page, as I would like to say. So I am putting a keyword as hip fractures. All right. So this is the hip fractures. So what is the, is it an acceptable medical subject heading? So yes, hip fracture seems to be an acceptable medical subject heading. So what does it tell you about? It tells you about fractures of the femur head, the femur neck, the trochanter, intertrochanteric, and the subtrochanteric area. So these all fractures that are present. It excludes fractures of the acetabulum and also below the subtrochanteric region. So this is what hip fracture medical subject heading denotes. So this is hip fractures. It is the preferred medical subject heading. So if you are going to put trochanteric fractures, either in the search or in your title or in your abstract, it is not going to be enough. Intertrochanteric fractures, again not enough. Subtrochanteric fractures, again not enough. They are all more narrower terminologies. If you want a narrow focus, a narrow outlook or a narrow search result, then you can use this. But our study was about hip fractures on the whole. So we have to ensure that we get all hip fractures. So this is the preferred medical subject heading. Proximal femur fractures, right? So if we take proximal femur fracture as a medical subject heading, because we often tell in our routine communication, patient has sustained a proximal femur fracture, we'll go for a proximal femur nailing. What proximal IT fracture, intertroch fracture, subtrochanteric fracture, pertrochanteric fracture. But is it an acceptable medical subject heading? It is not. There is no results. You can look down here. There is no results for proximal femur fractures at all. So proximal femur fracture is not a medical subject heading, acceptable medical subject heading. Likewise, every keyword that you have devised from your question, research question, has to be run through the medical subject heading database. Make sure it is an acceptable keyword. Next comes your search tools. For successful usage of search tools, you should know what is a Boolean operator. Basically, Boolean operators are words that connect your individual keywords to create a logical phrase that a database can understand. The most commonly used database is Google. Almost everybody of us use Google. And every time we have a doubt, it could be doubt, or it could be if you want to know something that is happening in the world, we just write whatever we want to know in the Google, and then we hit the search. Google is it is programmed in such a way that it automatically attaches these Boolean operators into its search engine so that it creates the appropriate search result. But sometimes even it can make errors because it is just a computer. It is not error free, and you are doing a very important search result. You are not searching for Vikram evening shows in Pondicherry. No, you are going to make important scientific literature related search. So you can't trust the Google, or you cannot trust an AI to make the appropriate Boolean operator. So that's why you have to use the Boolean operators. There are 5 Boolean operators. So we don't need to know about all 5. We just know about 3 important ones: and, or, and not. And is basically a Boolean operator that tells you that whatever keyword has been included into the search result has to be present in the search result. So basically, if I'm going to say incidence hip fractures, so if I'm putting and, it means the search result should contain incidence as well as hip fractures. Or it basically broadens by saying incidence or hip fractures. So any study that carries the word incidence will come. Any study which carries the word hip fractures will come. Any study which carries both will come. So it will broaden the search. Not, again, it will narrow the search. Incidence, not hip fractures. So which means, or rather, hip fractures, not incidence. Hip fractures will show, all search results with hip fractures will show. Incidence will be excluded. So the next part, this is an example that I'm going to show here. So this is your official homepage of PubMed. So here you can see there is a link, advanced. So you click advanced. Don't enter your keywords into this particular entry point. This is what it will show. So you will get a page where you will have this particular link saying all fields. And then here you will enter your keywords. And here you will add your Boolean operators. So preferably just put title or abstract. You don't need to have all fields. Title or abstract should be enough. Add your keyword. And there you go. You have about 8,249 results which carry the keyword hip fractures. This is how you do. So how about I make a very specific search? So I want to know about intertroch, neck fractures, pertrochanteric fractures, because they are all common osteoporotic fractures. Subtrochanteric fractures, on the other hand, are usually high velocity and less commonly associated with osteoporosis. So I don't want subtrochanteric fractures. So I don't want pathological fractures also. I don't want fractures because of metastasis or because of benign or malignant tumors. So I'm going to frame my search in such a way that I'm going to put not here. I'm going to not for subtrochanteric fractures. I'm going to add not for pathological fractures. And I'm finally going to add osteoporosis also, because that is also an important keyword for me. So here is the, after hitting search, here is what I get. So now my results have considerably narrowed. From around 8,000 odd, now I have around 2,077 results. So this is how you keep narrowing your search, by adding the relevant keywords, by adding important exclusional keywords, so that whatever you want to know, you can get it. What if you have multiple keywords, multiple topics? So you have to string together common keywords and topic by using appropriate brackets. So let me give you an example. So this is a paper that I'm currently working on, a systematic review on prevalence of overuse injuries in endurance cyclists. This is, I'm doing it with a colleague of mine. So here is it's going to be a systematic review about overuse injuries in endurance cyclists. So we have made a list of keywords. Then we probably asked one of our junior colleague to do this search. So he sent, sir, I'm not able to get a good result because I entered all the keywords. I'm getting around 4 lakh results. 4 lakh results, systematic review, you will never able to complete. Why this happened? Keywords are right, everything is perfect, but the use of brackets is wrong. The brackets have not been used properly. So what I did, I rearranged these keywords, I rearranged these brackets. I got these the common keywords into one particular bracket and then the other ones into the other particular bracket. I could significantly reduce the number of results. From around 4 lakh results, I got about 1,400 results. Now this is very much doable. Now I can go through these abstracts, add relevant abstracts into my systematic review. That's what we are doing right now, and exclude the irrelevant ones. Much more doable now. So why? What was the difference? I'll go again once again. You see the bracket usage here. Square brackets have been used, and these brackets have been entered, and they are not having any sense at all. They are randomly entered, and the search engine has not understood the purpose of these brackets. So basically what it has done, it has just included every study which carries either one of these terms, which means there are about 4 lakh results. It could even have studies which contain even the Boolean operators, because the Boolean operators do not make any sense here. The word this or Boolean operator does not make any sense here. So when it was rearranged this way, when the Boolean operators were separated from the keywords, and when the grouped keywords have been brought under a common bracket, you can see this is the common bracket. So when they were brought under these common brackets, we could significantly reduce the number of results. So now we know how to enter keywords and how to obtain these results. And finally, we should know what are the important databases that are available or search engines that are available to search for our relevant scientific literature. So these are the top 4: PubMed, Google Scholar, Science Direct, and Scopus. I just showed you a few examples of PubMed, so I'm not showing a picture of PubMed again. PubMed is actually quite famous for everyone, and it is easy. It can be customized for an in-depth search of a particular topic. It allows free access at least for the abstracts, even if the papers sometimes may be free, sometimes may not be, but the abstracts are all free. It allows access by most reference managers, which we will shortly discuss upon. But the negative point of this is it does not really sort articles by relevance or importance. Unless otherwise you go into the advanced search, you probably have to do some trick. You have to fine tune them. But even then, I have tried it. It does not really do that as well. On the other hand, Science Direct, it does a very good job of making a list of articles which are relevant. It offers 3 levels of search, whereas PubMed offers only 2, basic and advanced. It also has an expert here. It is a little bit more complicated to use. It is exclusively published by Elsevier, but the major disadvantage is you have to have institutional access to Science Direct. As an individual, accessing Science Direct, accessing articles in Science Direct is quite tricky. I have to go and ask some of my colleagues in central institutes. Only then I would be able to access Science Direct. Otherwise, it is not possible to access Science Direct. This is the homepage for Science Direct. You can have enter the keyword here. You can also enter the author name if you want to. So it is a little bit more complicated when compared to PubMed Advanced Search. It becomes a little bit more complicated. Finally, you have Google Scholar. It is the largest repository, or basically a collection of scientific articles and publications from various sources. These various sources is not only scientific journals and scientific publications. It also includes government sources. It also includes websites which contain information like WebMD, medical information, which are not scientific literature per se, but it does contain scientific information. So it is the largest collection of such a information. The results will show the number of citations along with it. It's very important because you now know that if a particular paper or a particular article has got a large number of citations, you know that it is valuable. You know the research that has been done in that particular article is useful, and it has been peer reviewed and it has been accepted by many people. That's why it's been cited by a lot of people. So it helps us to know that this is a very good result. Author related information is also easily accessible because it shows the author related information. You click on the author, it will also show all other relevant articles that have been published by the author. This is Google Scholar. Advanced search is very simple. It also helps in adding the Boolean operator. This is how you add the keywords in the advanced search of Google Scholar, and it shows a large number of results. Scopus is the largest database of exclusive scientific literature. No other source, only scientific literature. In fact, Science Direct is a part of Scopus, but why Scopus differs is it also includes articles from other publishers apart from Elsevier. And abstracts and metadata is also available, whereas Science Direct will only give you full articles. It does not show you abstract. It does not show the metadata involved in that article, whereas Scopus gives you both. So it also helps you sort out the search results based on citations. Google Scholar automatically shows the citations, but it does not help you sort out. It will not show the most number of citations on the top or the least number of citations on the bottom. It doesn't do that. It will show the most number of clicked article, but it may not have the larger number of citations. So Google Scholar works that way, whereas Scopus will help you to sort out based on the number of citations as well. So it is the most effective search engine to obtain an overview of the topic. So if you want to have an overview of the topic, Scopus is very good. But if you want to have an in-depth analysis, PubMed or Medline is more appropriate. This has been published by a particular researcher. He has done a particular research. Others, he found that PubMed gives you more in-depth analysis of a particular topic. So it is up to debate. Some may argue, but this is scientifically published by Dr. Tober. Let's come to the last part of our topic, reference managers. A lot of options are available for reference managers. Commonly used ones includes Mendeley, Zotero, EndNote, so on. I could keep on reading. There are a lot of reference managers available. But what is an ideal reference manager? So it should fulfill the following criteria. It should have ease of usage. it should have access to the most common databases, especially the 4 databases that I showed. It should provide a variety of citation styles. We know that there are multiple citation styles that is usually expected from a public scientific paper. Most common being Vancouver citation style. It should also have good cloud storage, because say for example, today I'm using a particular laptop, my laptop crashes, there is some issue with my laptop, I need to give it to service, but my paper cannot wait. I should be able to access my reference library in a different system as soon as I log in into the reference manager. So how is this possible? It should have a good cloud storage. And of course, preferably free to use, because most of us researchers, we do not have a lot of money with us to spend on research. So we can't keep on buying or we can't keep on subscribing to a particular paid version of a reference manager. Preferably if it is free to use, it is very well useful. So I found that 2 reference managers actually fulfill most of these criteria. So what are they? Zotero and Mendeley. So which one to use? So let's see first how to use them, how to install them. So you can download Mendeley from its official website. This is your official website for Mendeley, and Zotero, this is your official website for Zotero. You can just click in Google official website for Mendeley or official website for Zotero. You can then install their Chrome plugins. Mendeley has this plugin. This is your Mendeley plugin, the M with the dots, white dots and a red background. And this is your Zotero plugin. So Zotero plugin is like a piece of paper. So once you have installed plugins into the Google Chrome, you can then install them in MS Word. So this is Zotero, and then Mendeley comes here under references. So this is how they help in adding the references directly onto your written manuscript in MS Word. This is Zotero. So this is how it opens. So these are some of the studies that I have. These are some of the collections of articles. So you will be able to do this, and you will be able to group all your references into particular topics. And this is your Mendeley, almost similar, not much of a difference. You can't say much of a difference. So it looks same, it works the same, it is as easy. So what to choose? Should I choose Zotero? Should I choose Mendeley? I'm confused. I'll give you an example. So this is 2 references that has been added, random statement, but 2 scientific articles. Just make a note of the reference that has been added in the red. Okay. So you can look at this. This is not appropriate Vancouver format. This is appropriate Vancouver format. Same references, I'll flip it. Now this is in the appropriate Vancouver format, but this is not in the appropriate Vancouver format. What has changed? So Zotero's reference from Science Direct in Vancouver format looks like this. So from Science Direct, it is not giving the appropriate Vancouver format. On the other hand, Mendeley's reference from Science Direct in Vancouver format looks perfect. It looks perfect in the Vancouver format. The converse is also true. Zotero from PubMed in Vancouver format, perfect. Whereas Mendeley's reference from PubMed in Vancouver format, again, it is not a perfect Vancouver format. This is not accepted. This internet, these links, they will be excluded. You'll be asked to revise the reference by your reviewer or by your editor of your journal. So what is the key takeaway? Zotero is to be preferred for articles that are used from PubMed. So if you're going to use references of articles indexed in PubMed, use Zotero. If you're going to use references from Scopus and Science Direct, use Mendeley. But from Google Scholar, I find there is no difference. Sometimes they give the correct Vancouver format, sometimes they don't. So you probably have to manually check. But this is more or less a hard and fast rule. So I went through a number of 5 to 10, but probably around 10 combinations I've tried. It shows the same way. PubMed, Zotero works. Scopus and Science Direct, Mendeley works perfectly. So finally, I would like to conclude by saying that an efficient and a correct literature search will help you enhance your knowledge. It is not simple Googling. Googling is not scientific literature search. There is a methodology to it. There is a particular principle behind it. Make your life simple by using the correct reference managers. Every time you type in your references in Vancouver format and suddenly you are asked by your guide or by a senior colleague that this reference should come ahead and this reference should go behind, then you will be forced to renumber them if you do not enter your citations or references in the reference manager. So you will be manually retyping the entire thing again and again. very tiresome. Make your life simple by using reference managers. It will automatically rearrange and jumble it as and when you shift the references in your manuscript that has been typed in MS Word. Thank you, one and all. I thank Dr. Rajagopalan sir for giving me this wonderful opportunity. I also thank all the members of OASIS and POA as well. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, one and all.
Thank you, Venkatram. That was an excellent talk, and really he has very nicely given all. Venkat, can you
Yes, sir.
exit the screen? Stop
Yes,
sharing.
sir.
Okay, thank you, Venkatram. It was a very, very nice thing and
Thank
very,
you,
very
thank you.
useful. Without knowing, without you cannot do any research unless or otherwise you have a knowledge on the topic. And that also comes, and after every stage you need it. It was a very, very informative talk, and it was very nice.
Thank you.
The last we come to my talk, and already we are about 10 minutes behind schedule. So I hope I will try to reduce the talk to much as possible. And it is gone. Sorry. I'm a little bit okay. All right. See, I have kept this talk in the last because all the steps that you really am I audible, Anil? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're audible. Your screen is also visible.
Fine. Thank you, Anil. Okay. Now, all the steps that has been necessary in doing a research has been discussed by everybody. My idea is the common problem people say is we don't have material, we don't have topic, what to choose. That is what I'm planning to go into. Research is very different. Different types are there. The undergraduates do the research in a project. Postgraduates have their thesis. A person doing PhD or doctoral research. The very useful one when there's a multicentric study that gives you comes out some data when done properly, which is useful. So all these things, whatever you do, you have to first have a hypothesis, then you collect your data. That is your methodology of this study and the collection. Then you analyze your results and you form your conclusion. And hopefully all this finally, like what Dr. Aravind Kasturi told, help us to implement our findings into real life application. Now we all heard about the clinical one. There's also the basic research and clinical research. It all depends on availability of funds and somebody to help you to train whether you go into a basic science or a clinical research. Of course, our main talk will be on clinical research, but just for completion, a couple of slides on animal studies. I mean, it's probably a guide or a PG will like to have a basic studies because that's a totally different one, interesting one. But if you ever think of an animal study, I have gone through that. You will let you know later that it contains totally different steps. Like I think one of the persons showed about title. Our Anil Bhatt said about humans or animals. When you choose an animal, you have to have which animal do you want to do? Am I going to use the commonly used one which is seen in the picture, or how much numbers are in it? What are the variables I am going to do? What test I will do? What observation? All this is difficult. Now, my postgrad thesis was on an experimental study on equestrian transplantation in dogs. So before I think of the what animal I want, I have to know what I am going to do, what area I am going to do that. And then even after that, I may have a variety of choices. I have to see whether it is possible. I want to do a study in Alna, and that animal has got Alna, which is very, very small, to one workout. And of course, which are nobody will ever think of doing a study in monkey, but it's not that it's not done. I know a colleague of mine who did the study on production of scoliosis in animal monkeys. Very, very difficult. My choice was dog, but why? This is the reason. No, nobody is going to give me a veil for research, but just to know the anatomy difference. This is the human being, that's the ulna, and this is a dog. It's not only it is almost similar to the ulna in us, it is bigger than the radius. So easy for me. If I choose a bird, it will be very, very small. Of course, if it is going to be like that, you can't do it at all. So you have much more work to do. So always it is better you go for a clinical study because it is much comparatively easier, particularly if you are going to do for a thesis. So in a scientific method, we have heard all this. That is why I kept it my last on the order. So initially we had the value, and then Rishi gave about the statistics, and Dr. Anil very nicely covered all the things I'm going to talk about. So we have to have a research question. From that, I am going to develop hypothesis, and I must make my hypothesis testable. Then can design a study, which is going to be very, very important, as mentioned by Anil. Collect the data, determine the results and assess. That's what Rishikana told. And finally see whether it supports you or refutes your thesis. So coming to formulating the hypothesis, what is that? First of all, you have to have a research question. That is the first step in any research project. That will decide how you are going to do the study, what is your hypothesis, everything. And with the right research question, you will be able to get a lot of information. Now, how do you identify research question? That is going to be the most difficult thing. Then only you can formulate your thought thesis. The research question is very broad. We want to say, is A better than B, B better than C? I mean, things like that you start. Hypothesis, which makes the specific relation much more specific, and this should be from your examination of the variables for which you have to have a knowledge. That is what Dr. Megatram spoke about. You have to again go read more about it. Now, hypothesis, two things. It has to be tested by scientific research. It should be a research problem or a question with a solution. Now, have a good hypothesis. First, you should be able to identify independent and dependent variables. We'll go to that later. Know their relation. It should be simple. Don't make anything complicated. And don't put any specific measures how you are going to do it. Definitely, your statistical procedures need not come into that. It should only imply what population you are going to study. Is it falsifiable and testable? What is falsifiable? Not making something false, but I am going to say that a particular statement, one should be able to prove that it is false. I say that, okay, I am saying that this is implant is better than the other implant. It might be sometime I may be wrong. So the study should be able to show that what statement I said is false, and testable should be practically possible. What do you mean by that? We'll come to that. So hypothesis is not a guess. It should be based on your theories and knowledge. Whatever you already know, whatever you in your mind. For knowledge, you have to do a literature survey to know what is more about it, and you have to modify your hypothesis or based on that. Now, there are two important basic things, again already mentioned in the statistics talk, that you have to have two variables. One is an independent variable, which the researcher changes or controls. A dependent variable is something which the researcher observes and measures. Now, let me choose a topic which is not at all orthopedic. And the thing which we, from the time we joined medicine, we heard the proverb, apple a day keeps the doctor away. I mean, none of us like to hear that. So I will keep that. So let me say, if I convert that into hypothesis, if you say that, how do you do that? For example, if you take this, we have two variables. One is daily consumption of apple, that is apple a day. Second is doctor a day, few doctors visits. So these are the two apples. In this particular example, the independent variable is apple, the assumed cost. And the dependent variable is the frequency of doctor visits. So these are the two basic things. How do you develop it? You've got to mind this thing. We have to develop a hypothesis into a research question. And that should be focused, specific, and researchable. Now, let's change the topic from the apple. A simple thing, we all have have been students, have been teachers in our profession, whether you are in uh, institutional practice or a individual practice, still we are all teachers and students. So let's think about, do the students who attend more lectures do get better exam results? So what is in my mind is there any use by the classes attending the classes? Does it improve them? So how are you going to base it? So you first think what is already there in the literature. You search, do some search, preliminary search, find out. Then read, think, and form your opinion. What do you expect to find? It may be wrong, but you should know what I am going to expect, what I think was going to happen. For that, you have to read, think, and form your opinion. So, with the same hypothesis or research question, let's just think about from the research question of attending classes improves your score or not. Let's think of a good hypothesis with the variables. So we will change now. From the initial question about attending classes improve the marks or not, let's think of attending more lectures lead to better exam results. My hypothesis changed to attending more lectures lead to better exam results. So here now the answer is a little more clear, but it is still not very specific. Is it testable? What do you mean by testable? Uh, if you ever had the chance to read the first edition of the Passon John's book on trauma, I think it was somewhere in 1947 something. I am not very sure after all these gaps, but the one which I read was second edition, that was in 1996. Now, the Robertsons had made a statement that any fractures immobilized for an infinite period will always unite. Is it really true? Now I want to test it. I say that a fracture neck of femur immobilized in a spica for 2 years, it will unite. Is it possible to test? Who is going to stay in a spica for 2 years? So it's not testable. So hypothesis has to be testable and should contain relevant variables, specific group, and predicted outcome of the experiment or analysis. So let's go back to the same student and the class. A simple way to write the variable is if and then. If you fix a fracture neck of femur, then the fracture will unite. I'm just telling you. So that's the so we change it into same thing. If a first year student start attending more lectures, then their exam scores will improve. Now from saying that attending classes improves the marks, we have got something more. But is that really the answer? Now hypothesis has to have some correlation and some effect. So if student attendance improve, I think better will be if still more refine your hypothesis. The number of lectures attended by first year students has a first year student is just for example, has a positive effect on the exam score. Here also there's a problem. That is, we have here the number of lectures attended, the population of first year students, and they say the effect is positive. Not all of us will agree to that. Look at this. Now we got two groups. We again modify it is a first year student who attends the most lectures compared to those who attend a few lectures will have better exam. Now we have three groups. A first year student who attended more lectures, first year group attended few or lesser lectures or minimal lectures. We have to, and the third is the exam score. Now this also can be modified. There's something called null hypothesis. Null hypothesis means there's no association. Whatever you study or not attend or not, there is no difference. This is called, also the short form may be HO, but alternative is H1 or HA. Let's put it here. A null hypothesis for this will be the number of lectures attended by a first year student has no effect on their final exam score. And finally, you do this, you study, when you evaluate, you might find that the statement is wrong, it is falsifiable. If you find that their results are better, it is falsifiable. But this is testable. The alternative hypothesis will be, to null will be, the number of lectures attended by a first year student has a positive effect on their final exam score. So these are the ways you can develop your hypothesis either into two groups. One group where they have attended the maximum number, one group they have attended the minimal number, and then last will be what the exam score. Depends on what is your subject. This is a given. For some particular topics, null hypothesis may be better. In other ones, the other will be better. So in effect, you have to formulate a hypothesis, frame the hypothesis in a format that is testable, then test the hypothesis. That is essentially your whole study is going to be. Formulating, we said, the framing that is testable, and testing is by the scientific method. How do you do that? First you choose a question, then we identify hypothesis, we came to hypothesis, then we make it testable, then you have to design the methodology and design. That is an experiment to answer the hypothesis. Then you do the study, you collect the data, determine the results, and if the results support you, fine. Or if you refute you, or if you see if it's opposite, it doesn't accept, it goes against your hypothesis, nothing wrong with it. That is equally important. So that is in a essence, almost all this has been talked by everybody. Result statistics here, Ashikana talks. Dr. Anil gave you the whole overall one, and Venkatram told you about how to do the literature survey and search for it. So that's the thing. And the last few slides, we are coming to the time we planned about 9:10. The last few slides, people say there is no topic, there is no material, there is no case. Now look at this. One says, sir, if I take plating of radius, already there are so many publications. That doesn't mean the end of it. Look at the vitamin D level. Vitamin D, any prescription, any subject, any patient, one of the maximum used now is treatment is vitamin D, and also the levels. This is a publication in a Journal of Pharmacotherapy in 2012, about 10 years back. That's a review article, and the authors said that the meta-analysis, one of the best evidence thing, published in 2007, showed that vitamin D supplementation was associated with significant reduced mortality. Now look at this. This is done about 2 years back. It is in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition, and the author, they say that there is whatever available literature, it's a subject of debate. The large intervention studies have been unable to show a clear benefit. Does this mean that the previous thing was not? No. The problem is, this is what I think Dr. Anil mentioned about your study being done in the proper methodology. What they found the mistake was there was limitations in trial design, and showed in statistics by Rishikana also. You have to choose your population very well. If you are there's going to be a limitation in that design, it will not make the basic requirement. There's a basic requirement for a nutritional intervention study, and you have to look at the sample size. The sample size is too small. So because of all this, we had wrong results. So even a well already done topic, you can still improve on the quality, do a study again, and you may find the opposite result. So there are so much studies on that, doesn't mean that is the end of it. Everything can be improved. Second thing, topics. I think one of the common problems anywhere in the world in orthopedic OPD, non-trauma OPD is backache. So many things about backache. Ethnic and gender variation, rural versus urban population difference, corporation versus daily wage workers. We would study the IT staff along with the daily wage workers, cost of medical benefits, loss of unskilled jobs. Now that's going to be very, very important. Suburban and rural variation, and diet, exercise, air pollution. Pollution is highly talked about now. If you are surprised, you go into search like the way Venkatram said, see how many are there. You will be surprised that still it is not, and what is done in particular part of the country may not be relevant to the another country or another state or the world. If you, I was here seeing one literature search on a cancer journal on cervical cancer. Western Africa or something was highest and the Eastern Asia was the lowest. Totally different in it. There must be a reason. Lastly, among students, backache in students. I did one study, I actually gave a thesis on backache in medical students. Is it more or less compared to engineering students? Then I went and searched how many publications at that time. It was about, I think about 9 years or 8 years back. There's only one publication from Pakistan, nowhere else. And when we did the study on who is having more backache, the results were interesting because actually it was less in our students because we probably were more more active and not sitting down in the table and chair. Whatever the reason, these are all the topics available. So don't think that there is no material for study. That's not correct. Or a rate of survival in fracture neck of femur. There are plenty of studies in that. But is it relevant to your population, our method of management, our patients follow-up, or adherence to our instructions, all may be different. So that doesn't prevent you from doing it. No thinking. When you talk about E and D, exposure and disease, first thing we should come to our mind is avian and alcohol. Anywhere you go, exam, you read, talk, jokes, we know. Patient gives the alcoholism, we think of that. Does it mean that we have great research? No dearth of population. As I recently read somewhere, 60% of alcohol consumption in India is by southern states, 4 states. So we should not have a problem of patients. Have you done a study on that? There isn't many to talk about, particularly well-timed studies. Look at the other thing. Smoking and fracture union, we all know. Have you looked at alcoholics and fracture union? This is an article. Of course, as you can see, it's the open bone journal. Here, they have looked at the incidence of fracture healing and alcoholism. To best of my knowledge, anybody in the faculty can correct me. I don't think there's a published article on alcoholism and fracture healing from our area, our nation or our south, whatever. We are a big country. So this particular study suggested that more intervention is more intervention, more study is necessary to think of fracture treatment protocols to have a prompt fracture healing in alcoholics. So all this was to show that there are plenty of still topics we can. So to conclude, try to, not about my talk, generally speaking for our own today's talks, all the talks, try to keep in mind that research is relevant. Please don't think that what I am doing is not relevant. Somebody may depress you, why you are doing this. No, you will find something. If you do not find, it is equally important. Must be a reason for that. And if you find the opposite, that is more useful, that you know that there are great studies possible to do that. And also, whatever you find can act as a guiding principle for you for your research. So nothing is irrelevant. So whatever you do, it will be useful. With that, I close. Somebody says that you can't do it because you are this, you don't have material. Don't ever give up. Be the tree, not the rock. With that, I conclude. Thanks to you all.
Great talk, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't take over. Any questions from any of the faculty who are present here? Not mine. Venkat is there. If Anil is there.
And anybody wants a query, please do unmute and ask.
Anil, you want to add anything left out by any of us?
Nothing, sir. Great program. I have not seen a very few attendees, but I think all of them would have benefited so much. All the talks were very crisp, and I think questions were not there because everybody has explained it very clearly.
I think Anil, we should try because Vijay Raghavan has an open mind. I always
I think Vijay Raghavan, please.
Vijay Raghavan, to you. You are muted, Vijay Raghavan. Yes. Yes, Vijay Raghavan, please. No, Vijay Raghavan is saying he doesn't want to ask. Okay. Then I will conclude this. First of all, I really thank all the faculty. Arvind Kasturi is a very busy person. He has got other things, but medical superintendent. Rishi Kapoor was again like Anil, but was engaged with something. They both of them had other program. Anil just traveled from Bangalore to London, and he had a program today. I'm really very happy that he attended. And Venkatram, I said he is going to be the hero of the future. We are going to hear a lot about him. And Anil, thanks for staying till the end.
Yeah.
But most important, Vijay Raghavan. Over to you, Vijay Raghavan.
Yes.
At least Vijay has a problem, I think, with the mic. Okay. So on behalf of Vijay Raghavan, I thank every one of you the delegates and the audience, other colleagues who attended, so many senior colleagues were there. And it will be very, very unjust if I don't thank Debolina for such a good work. I have not interacted in any meeting with her before, but it was a pleasure today at every step. Thank you, Debolina, if you are listening to me.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
they're a
Thank
good group.
you so much.
They're a good group. Clarinet.
I know. That's why I said I'm a small one, so I didn't know. So, but it was really nice. Thank you, Anil. Thank you so much. And Anil, anything you want to say, Anil?
No, sir. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and it's always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Venkat.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, Anil. Anil, have a good time. Enjoy your place. Enjoy the place.
Yes, sir.
And enjoy the place. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anil.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks to all
Hello.
of you. Good night.
Thank you all faculties.
Yes,
Thank you,
Anil.
sir. Thank you.
All the faculties were great. Hey, Venkat,
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
you have a great future.
Over to you, Debolina.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
choosing our platform. And we are closing here. for today.
Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you all for the best, for the support. Good night.
Okay.
And
And
we'll have next program on the first Tuesday of Monday.
Debolina, can you stop
you.
recording?
Yeah, sure, sir.
Okay, let's just stop.